actually lived and worked in Gaza, the American International School there. So I dug out one of my pictures with the Khalifa. I was messing around and wearing it like a sheikh, just kind of a middle finger to Hasburist or whatever. It's patently ridiculous, this notion that everything was great and then Hamas, for no reason at all, just decided to raid just for kicks, just because they're,
Right.
rabid anti-Semites or something, is just
Yeah.
ridiculous. I think that's important to be clear that occupied people have the right to defend themselves, including with armed defense, in order to liberate themselves from this occupation. This has been my position since before October 7th. I never condemned Hamas, nor will I. The occupied strike back. Zion must be retired. Up the rebels. And there's a wonderful picture that I'm sure some people will see this picture and be freaked out. Oh my God, they're teaching their son to this, that, and the other. But I think it's a lovely picture. Not that I think it's lovely that they have to be fighting colonialism all this time, but you can see the love and you can see why he would do this, the dad, of course, because give me liberty or give me death. And it's not like they have a Navy or an Air Force or a Marine Corps or an airport or jets or helicopters or Apache helicopters, submarines, all the weapons of an apparatus of death and destruction that the Israeli has at its disposal, largely from the U.S. So I'm not on talk shows and having Piers Morgan ask me 36 times, do you condemn Hamas? But if I was in that situation, I would say you're not going to extract any condemnation from me for several reasons. The first is all this violence stems from the occupation and the apartheid.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing, I'm not going to condemn a group of people for engaging in terms of engagement set by the occupier. Yeah? So the terms of engagement aren't set by Hamas, set by Israel and the United States. So the reason why they want to take so many hostages is because the only way they can get their people back from Israel that takes them and holds them in indefinite detention is through prisoner swaps. That's not because Hamas likes to take prisoners. That's because that's the only way that they can get their people back from Israeli detention. So again, the
Yeah.
terms of engagement, so the kind of format of that is clear. And also the language of violence and brutality and humiliation is also the stage that's been set by Israel, supported by United States. So that's another reason why no one's going to extract a condemnation from me. And the third reason is because it's a way to control the narrative. So before I can say anything about Israel or their response, first I have to condemn Hamas. That plays into their hand. I want to talk about the broader issue. I want to talk about the source of the violence. I want to talk about what Israel has been doing, what the international community has not been doing. They set the terms of engagement. Why don't we start the conversation with, do you condemn the apartheid? Do you condemn the legal occupation? Do you condemn what Netanyahu has done? Do you condemn the mowing of the lawn? Do you condemn them controlling the diet and deciding whether they're going to let some chocolate go into Gaza? And this idea, this bullshit idea that people say, well, no, that's not fair because Israel removed its settlements from Gaza. If I was being held captive, or if I had a group of people in my home who were controlling me or taking part of my house, and they left the house but surrounded the house to control anything that gets in and out of the house, is that demonstrably better? So
Yeah.
whether it be the air, the sea, anything, Israel is the total gatekeeper and they can do whatever they want. And the Palestinians have no civil or political rights. And that's another reason why you'll never extract a blanket condemnation from me on that. I like the Star Wars analogy of the occupied strike back. People forget that when we cheered on those Death Stars being destroyed, that there were non-combatants on those Death Stars, and not that that's great, but again, this is a situation and they did not cause it. And I think the final reason why I wouldn't condemn them is that, and you also mentioned this as well, Jeff, is that if you are the occupied and you're fighting against the occupier, especially one that has all the military might and political support that Israel has, there's no way, it would be impossible for them to hit quote unquote hard targets. They can't. They're not allowed to have the weapons that would allow them to only focus on quote unquote hard targets, military targets. They don't have a guided missile that can precision targets. They can shoot rockets. If they make a direct hit, they can do some damage. While I'm not happy about quote unquote civilians being killed, looking at the context is important. Historically, there's never been, that I'm aware of, an armed resistance movement that didn't hit quote unquote soft targets, medium targets to further their cause. And lastly, another reason why I'm not going to condemn Hamas unless everybody else wanted to condemn Israel first is, okay, if we're going to do a condemnation game, we have to use the same measure. I'll even give them that, even though it's skewed because one's the occupier, one's the occupied and all this bullshit. Let's use the same measure. Quantitatively and qualitatively, if you want to call them a terrorist, tell me why that is. And then look at what Israel's been doing for 70 some years. They're also a huge terrorist then.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
war is terror. Once you
Yeah.
go there, and people with the fake 40 babies thing were freaking out. But how many babies has the US killed? How many babies has the UK killed? How many babies has Germany, France, Japan, all along down the line?
Yeah.
Directly through what they call collateral damage, but also through sanctions. Yeah. So it's just this hypocrisy and measuring with two cups, as the Dutch would say. So has Hamas engaged in acts that are terrorist acts? Yeah. Who hasn't? If you're an armed resistance or if you're a military, who hasn't? So then for all those reasons, no one will extract a condemnation of Hamas for me. Again, Zionism must be retired. Up the rebels. And when I see the picture of this man and his son, for some reason, it gives me hope.